The preacher's hands trembled as he held the worn Bible, his eyes darting between the groom and the three armed men standing at the back of the church. "Do you, James Rutherford, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" James stood there in his dusty trail clothes, blood still fresh on his sleeve from the bullet graze, staring at the woman beside him, a complete stranger whose name he'd learned only 10 minutes ago. Catherine Mills, 7 months pregnant, her face pale as winter snow. The man in the back, tall, scarred, with a black duster, rested his hand on his gun. Silas Crane. His voice was soft as a grave opening. "I said, do you take this woman?" James met Catherine's terrified eyes. "I do." "And you, Catherine Mills, do you take this man?" Her hand went to her belly, protective. "I do." Silas Crane smiled, a terrible smile. "Congratulations, you just bought yourself one more day." But before this moment shattered their world, let me take you back to where it all began. 2 days earlier, James Rutherford had been a free man, a drifter who'd spent 5 years moving from place to place after his family's homestead burned in a Comanche raid. He'd stopped in Bitter Creek only because his horse had thrown a shoe. He planned to stay one night, get the horse shod, and disappear into the mountains. But then he walked into the Silver Dollar Saloon. The man with the black duster, Silas Crane, looked up from his cards and smiled. "Fresh blood. We're looking for a 4th man, someone who's not afraid of unconventional work." "Not interested," James said. Silas's smile disappeared. "That's unfortunate." The thin man at the table drew first. James was faster. His shot took the man in the shoulder. The saloon erupted into chaos. James ran, bullets chasing him through the darkness. Desperate and bleeding, he pounded on the door of the only lit building on the edge of town, a small cabin with smoke rising from its chimney. The door opened. Catherine Mills pulled him inside and barred the door like she'd been expecting trouble. "You're bleeding," she said, no fear in her voice. "They're right behind me, 3 men. I know who they are. Silas Crane." She peered out the window. "You're dead unless you're more valuable alive." Hoofbeats surrounded the cabin. Silas Crane's voice cut through the night. "Send him out, Catherine." Catherine's jaw tightened. "What if I could offer you something better than revenge?" "I'm listening." "The man in here marries me, right now. That makes him family. You can't touch family without cause." James stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Silas was quiet, thinking, "Why would you do that?" "Because I need a husband before this baby comes, and he needs protection." "You've got until morning. If you're not married by sunup, the stranger dies." After Silas left, Catherine told James her story. She'd come to Bitter Creek running from a violent father. 6 months ago, the circuit judge, Vernon Mills, had courted her with promises. When she got pregnant, he denied everything and called her a liar. His wife hired Silas Crane to handle the situation. But Silas wouldn't kill a pregnant woman or a woman's husband. Catherine needed to be married before Vernon's wife decided she was too much of a threat. "Unless I'm someone's wife," Catherine whispered, "she'll have Silas kill us both." James looked at this woman who'd saved his life and now was asking him to save hers. "There's something you should know," James said. "I'm not a good man. I've done things I'm not proud of." And you should know I'm carrying another man's child. Everyone will know you're raising a bastard." They stared at each other in the growing light, two souls marked by the frontier's harsh justice. "Guess we're both taking a risk," James said, but neither knew how deadly that risk would become. After the wedding, Vernon Mills stepped into their path outside the church. "Congratulations, Catherine, though you've chosen poorly, a drifter with no prospects." "That's no longer your concern," Catherine said. His wife Eleanor stepped forward, her face like carved ice. "That child is still your responsibility, husband. Your indiscretion doesn't disappear. The child is mine now, by law, by marriage. You have no claim." Vernon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see about that." That night, gunshots shattered their cabin window. James threw himself over Catherine as glass rained down. The attack stopped as suddenly as they'd started. "They're trying to kill the baby," Catherine gasped, "or me, or both." Then Silas Crane appeared at their door. "We need to talk. Eleanor Mills just doubled my fee to look the other way while her husband solves his problem. Unless you can match what they're paying, I got no reason to keep you alive." "How much?" James asked. "More than you've got, but I'll give you 48 hours to figure something out. After that, accidents happen to pregnant women." After he left, Catherine whispered, "I'm sorry. I thought marriage would save us. All I did was doom you." James looked at this woman who'd saved his life and now was asking him to save hers. "There's one way, might be," James said. "We find evidence of Vernon's corruption. Every judge has dirt. We find his, make it public, destroy his power." "That's insane." "During the war, I worked in intelligence, finding secrets, stealing documents. I remember how." James met her eyes. "Can you trust me?" For the first time, hope flickered in Catherine's expression. The Mills kept their records in a safe in Vernon's study. James waited until they left town for a trial, then broke in after midnight. 20 minutes of working the safe, and it opened. Inside were ledgers, documenting years of bribes, falsified rulings, stolen land. Vernon Mills had built an empire of corruption. James was stuffing the ledgers into a sack when he heard the front door open. They'd come back early. Vernon, Eleanor, and Silas Crane. "That drifter's planning something," Vernon was saying. "Let me handle it tonight," Silas replied. "I'll make it look like an accident, both of them, and the child." James's blood ran cold. They were going to the cabin, where Catherine waited alone. He climbed out the window and ran. He was 2 streets away when he heard the gunshots. The cabin was burning when James arrived. Flames poured from the windows, smoke billowing into the night. Catherine was on the floor, blood pooling beneath her, one hand pressed to her side where a bullet had found her. Her eyes opened as James crashed through the door. "James, the baby's coming, now!" He lifted her, feeling her blood warm against his hands. Outside he heard horses, Silas coming back to finish the job. James carried Catherine out the back, into the darkness. He ran with her weight in his arms, ran like maybe this time he could outrun death itself. He made it to the church and pounded on the door. The preacher opened it, eyes wide with shock. "Help her," James gasped. "Please." The preacher's wife had delivered babies before. She worked through the night while James stood guard at the door, rifle ready, the stolen ledgers at his feet. Catherine screamed. James had heard men scream in the war, but this was different. This was life fighting to enter the world while death waited outside. Near dawn, a baby's cry pierced the silence. James turned to see Catherine holding a tiny, red-faced infant wrapped in the preacher's wife's shawl. Tears streamed down Catherine's face, exhaustion, relief, joy, terror, all mixed together. "It's a girl," she whispered. James approached slowly, looking down at the child who'd nearly cost him everything. The baby's eyes were closed, her tiny fists waving in the air. "She's beautiful," he said, and meant it. Catherine looked up at him, this man she barely knew who'd become her husband to save both their lives. "James, I need to tell you something. When I asked you to marry me, it was just survival, but somewhere between that moment and this one—" "I know," James said quietly. "I felt it too." Outside, hoofbeats approached. Silas had found him. James grabbed the ledgers and stepped outside to face him. Silas sat on his horse, his men flanking him, but James held up the documents. "Everything Vernon Mills has done for 15 years, James called out. "Every bribe, every stolen acre, every falsified ruling. I'm taking these to the territorial marshal. You can kill me, but copies are already on their way. Vernon Mills is finished." It was a lie. There were no copies, but Silas didn't know that. Silas studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "You know what? I think my contract with the Mills just expired. A man's got to know when to pick the winning side." He tipped his hat and rode away. Vernon Mills was arrested 3 days later. Eleanor Mills left town on the first stagecoach, her reputation in ruins. The territorial marshal commended James for his bravery and offered him a position as deputy. James and Catherine named their daughter Hope because that's what she represented, a new beginning born from desperation and danger. 6 months later, as winters settled over Bitter Creek, James sat by the fire holding Hope while Catherine recovered from a day of sewing. She was his wife now, in truth, not just on paper. What had begun as a desperate bargain had become something neither of them expected: love. "Do you ever regret it?" Catherine asked, "marrying a pregnant stranger to save your life?" James looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the home they'd built from ashes and fear. "Not for a single moment," he said. Outside, snow began to fall on Bitter Creek, covering the scars of what had been, making everything clean and new again. Thank you for listening to this tale here on Frontier Love Stories. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe, because out here, every sunset hides another story waiting to be told.